Hi, the purpose of this video is to help corporations avoid mistakes on M&A and deal sourcing, particularly deal sourcing. This is a summary of my experience collected since my first M&A in 1995, so almost 30 years of experience. M&A, as you know, can be a great way to grow and improve a company, yet it comes at a cost. Studies from McKinsey, Harvard, and other leading institutions, research firms, etc. show that roughly 50%, sometimes even more, of M&A transactions done by corporates do not create value for the buyers. They almost always create value for the sellers, but for the buyers, it's not always the case. So in this episode, I'm going to try to show the most common mistakes that we observed. And let's start with mistake number one. So the first most common mistake we see is putting too much time and effort into a strategic M&A process review, so to say, with the goal to define what is actually the typical target company. It's obviously a good habit to plan things ahead and to know what you're looking for, and in a normal corporate strategy cycle to get everybody together to define what the strategy and the consequences thereof should be. That's usually a very good exercise, sometimes also involving some waste, but hardly to be avoided. So that typical strategy exercise can take 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Sometimes if there is a change in the executive leadership, it could take even more than a year because it's paused. All of that is good if you're doing the standard strategy kind of review of actions in your operations. For the M&A strategy, that's usually totally overkill. In my experience, I've been in this process a few times. It's super frustrating. You do all the strategy, you have all the workshops, you define what you're really looking for, you define even a list of targets, prioritize them, and then none of them is for sale, right? So could be a year, could be 2 years after the initial start that you realize your strategy has been complete waste of time because one of the companies that you really like to buy is for sale. So my recommendation here is very simple. Spend 1 or 2 days, maybe 1 or 2 weeks maximum, with top leadership. Define like some goals and some certain no-goes. Of course, products, services, geography, size need to be somewhat clear, and then start approaching those companies and see what comes out of it. That's usually much quicker to get to some results, and often you detect things that you haven't thought about before. So let's get to mistake number 2. As you can already see, it's not having an execution team for an M&A process. Now, this may sound obvious to some, to others it's not. So quite a lot of M&A transactions, in our view, suffer from corporates not having the right team internally or even externally to support an M&A process. So what I mean is, obviously, in a way, buying a company is simple, you think. If you're prepared to pay more than everybody else, then that's all you need to do, pay more than everybody else. But the question is, of course, how much more? And in many cases, as I've quoted in the beginning, that is a lot more than is necessary. So having experienced people internally is important, not only to evaluate cases, but also then to properly integrate them. So-called post-merger integration team, PMI team. And if you don't have them internally, which you don't need to have, there are a lot of people externally who, of course, are not cheap, but they save you a lot of other costs, and that's important to have. The consequence of not having that is, well, first can be that you have to rely only on sell side processes. Means you don't source deals yourself because you don't have an internal team. You don't have an external team who source for you. That can happen as well. You end up paying a lot more in the transaction. And if you don't do the transaction, you have incurred all the costs with all the advisors and all the own costs, and can be $500,000 or more, and you don't do the deal. And even worse, you overpay. And yeah, for every company transaction, overpaying 10% or 50%. That's what happened in my experience. If the deal process deal sourcing process is not done in the professional manner. So, obvious recommendation: if you do something like an M&A process, get either internal people or easier external people on board that are ready to start when the M&A process starts. Okay, so let's assume you've covered and avoided mistake number 1 and 2, and now we are getting to an independent third type of mistake that we often see, particularly for leading corporations who already have a large deal flow. I get to hear from the M&A persons, well, we see whatever, I mean, let's say 500 transactions each year, and we only do 1 or 2 deals. Why should we do a proactive research? So what I mean by proactive is basically you have a strategy, you make a long list, and you then approach companies you think are possibly suitable. So that proactive research, they miss out. And in our experience, not doing a proactive research means you're probably only seeing a small portion of the possible deals. In our experience, proactive research increases the number of potential deals, suitable potential deals, by 5 to 10 times the deals that are on the market. I guess everybody understands the deals on the market are only a very small fraction of the total possible deals. So let's say you have an industry and there are like 100 target companies. Only 5% of them will be selling due to whatever reasons, succession, whatever. The other 95 in that given year are not on the market, not selling. But what we see is many of them may be considering selling. It's just they haven't made a step yet to do this process. And what the corporates miss out on that is obviously some private preliminary conversation, building the relationship, evaluating the case, and avoiding auction processes. And even worse, they may miss out on a much better deal because they don't see that. They only see those deals that they get approached passively. And there may be only suboptimal deals as they are. So obviously, my recommendation here is to be a bit more proactive. And even if it doesn't involve like 6 to 9 months of M&A strategy, maybe it involves 2 weeks of M&A long list, and it can be usually done in parallel to the passive approach. Certainly, for sure, corporates are missing out not doing the proactive approach. So let's get to mistake number 4. That's a nice one. I call it the perfect deal trap. Now, how can a perfect deal be a trap? Quite simple. If you're waiting for the perfect deal to help grow the company and never shows up on the door, then you're kind of like mentally trapped because it will not happen. So how can that be? Obviously, you need to have some sort of sense, and as I mentioned before in the mistake number 1, sometimes the list of criteria to define the company and the type of company and the characteristics can be so long that virtually it's impossible to find that. That's similar to finding a house or even a spouse or maybe other things in life. Usually there are some compromises you have to make. And yeah, I mean, quite obviously what happens here is the companies don't do any deals. They miss out on normal deals, which could be a fit, which could be a value to them. They miss out on learning on normal deals. And even in the lucky or unlucky situation that they do find the perfect deal, they typically then become so entangled and interested that they totally overpay. So in many ways, that's yeah, something that needs to be. I think that happens quite a lot. Overpaying. That goes back to the initial statistic, what I mentioned from McKinsey and Harvard. So my suggestion here is simply to be closer to the market and keep the skills available for doing deals and understanding what is a good deal and what is not a good deal, rather than not doing anything and then waiting for the one that ticks all the boxes and paying way too much for that one company. Yeah, so the final mistake from our list, of course, there are a lot more mistakes you could do, probably 1,000 or millions of different type of things that can go wrong in an M&A transaction. But from our list, the final one, maybe it's the most important one. So this is not a prioritized list. For different corporates can be different kind of priorities. But the final one we title internally as a great deal is different from a great company. So as mentioned before, of course, you can have great companies. If you buy them and you pay twice what they're worth, then I guess that's not a great deal. And there are again numerous examples of that going around. But to make it maybe more pointy, look at it the other way around. So if you have a company which is losing money, maybe strategy is not so great, and in your target list prioritization, it wouldn't even rank in the top quartile, it still may be worth buying that company because it's cheap. So it's always a relation, in my view, to price. And sometimes in a negotiation, if we find that the company which was looking good at the beginning turns out to look not as good, we simply can adjust the price without losing the face, and we can still do a good deal. So for you folks, I hope that's been useful. The top 5 lessons, mistakes that we see from corporate M&A. Let me know what you think about it. If there's any question, I'll be answering anything that you send my way. Thank you very much for your attention.